You think canned foods are harmless pantry staples, cheap, quick, and reliable. But what if I told you some cans are loaded with hidden dangers, BPA, heavy metals, and bacteria that thrive in storage? Seniors especially risk heart, kidney, and memory damage from these convenient foods. Today, we'll expose 7 canned foods you must avoid, and 2 that are actually safe to eat. Let's start off with a canned food that proves just how quickly things can spin out when that control slips. At number 7, we have Vienna sausages. You can smell them before you even touch the pull tab. That sharp metallic twang, the jellied broth on top, those soft pale links that break apart with almost no bite. For a lot of people, it's nostalgia in a can. For anyone over 45, it's more like a health trap wrapped in brine. Here's the math nobody puts on the label. One little can might not look like much, but it carries 700 to more than 1,000 milligrams of sodium. That's a third to 3/4 of what the American Heart Association says people with high blood pressure should eat in an entire day. And let's be real, who eats half a can? Most of us down the whole thing with crackers and call it lunch. For younger folks, maybe that just means extra thirst. For anyone older, especially on blood pressure meds, kidney pills, or diuretics, that sodium spike is like pulling the rug out from under your heart and kidneys. Blood pressure climbs, water builds, and suddenly your medication has to fight harder just to keep up. And those reduced sodium labels? They still pack 700 plus milligrams per can. That's the FDA's loophole. Reduced only means 25% less than the original. It doesn't mean safe. And here's a cruel twist. Some brands replace the missing salt with potassium chloride. Sounds harmless until you realize anyone with kidney disease or on meds like lisinopril or spironolactone can end up with dangerous heart rhythm issues. The National Kidney Foundation flat out warns against it. Imagine thinking you're making a healthier choice, only to push your heart into chaos. The risks aren't just in the formula, they're in the can itself. Vienna sausages are a low-acid canned food, which means they rely on high-temperature sterilization and a perfect seal to keep out botulism. When that seal fails, you don't get a warning smell. The CDC says botulinum toxin is invisible, tasteless, and deadly. Remember that Conagra recall in 2023? Over 2 million pounds of canned meat, including Armour Vienna sausages, pulled because of packaging defects that could let contamination slip in. Even when the seal holds, the lining raises questions. Most cans are coated with plastic films to stop corrosion. Some are BPA, some are the BPA-free replacements regulators still haven't really vetted. Europe dropped its safe exposure level to nearly 0 in 2023. Here in the US, FDA still shrugs. If you've dealt with hormone-sensitive cancers or diabetes, that uncertainty isn't a small detail. And don't overlook the curing chemicals. Nitrites keep the sausages pink and fight botulism, but they also form nitrosamines, the very compounds that push the World Health Organization to label processed meat a known carcinogen. Add in phosphate additives that quietly stress aging kidneys and arteries, and you're stacking risks on top of risks, all in a can you can finish in 5 minutes. Sure, the texture makes them easy to chew, that's why they go down fast. But so does tuna with mashed beans, or soft scrambled eggs with spinach. Those give you protein without hijacking your blood pressure or kidney function. At the end of the day, Vienna sausages aren't just a salty snack. They're a compact bundle of sodium, nitrites, additives, and packaging chemicals, aimed straight at the weak spots of an older body. The can is small, the consequences aren't. But if that one rattled you, wait until you crack open a can that hisses like the ocean itself. Next up at number 6, we have canned tuna. The lid flexes, the brine splashes, and that fishy wave rolls out. Half lunchbox nostalgia, half bait shop deja vu. It feels safe, almost wholesome, like the budget-friendly protein that got us through college and tight paychecks. But the trust you put in that can, it's shakier than you think. Start with mercury, the heavyweight hiding behind the label. Light tuna, usually skipjack, carries far less than albacore white tuna. We're talking about a 3-fold difference. Sounds like trivia until you realize mercury builds up in the brain and kidneys over years, not days. For younger bodies, maybe that's margin to spare. For someone in their 60s juggling blood pressure pills or managing early kidney disease, it's a slow drip of trouble you'll never see coming until the fog and tremors set in. And here's the kicker. Mercury isn't the only chemical curveball. Sometimes it's not what the fish carries, but what happens after it's caught. If tuna warms on the dock, bacteria flip its natural histidine into histamine. And histamine doesn't care if the fish is grilled, frozen, or canned. Once it's there, it's there. Open a shiny can, make your sandwich, and an hour later you're flushed, pounding heartbeat, itchy skin. Not an allergy, poisoning. Try explaining to the ER nurse that your tuna melt felt like a heart attack. Then comes the quiet assassin, botulism. Rare, yes, but unforgiving. And here's the truth older shoppers need to hear. Botulinum toxin has no taste, no smell, no clue. That 2025 recall? Dozens of tuna brands yanked from shelves at Costco, Trader Joe's, H-E-B, because the easy open lid design could let the world's deadliest bacteria through the door. One slip in factory sealing, and the can you thought was safe turns into a sealed vial of paralysis. Even when the seal holds, the lining inside the can brings its own baggage. Remember all those BPA-free banners plastered across packaging? Europe now says the safe daily dose of BPA is practically zero. The FDA hasn't moved the needle, and the replacements, BPS, BPF, may be no better. If you've survived prostate cancer, are fighting diabetes, or just don't want chemical roulette in your pantry, those three little letters on the can aren't the reassurance you think they are. And let's not pretend salt isn't part of the trap. A drained can in water clocks a couple hundred milligrams, easy. Flavored packs push higher. Reduced sodium versions? Some sneak in potassium chloride. Fine for a teenager, dangerous for a retiree with kidney disease or on common heart meds. One wrong sandwich and your blood chemistry tilts into rhythm chaos. Look closer at the ingredient line and you'll see the fine print nobody brags about. Soy broth, pyrophosphates, stabilizers, more additives. Your doctor wishes you weren't stacking on top of aging kidneys, stiff arteries, and an already packed prescription list. Sure, tuna still has omega-3s, still packs protein. But the path from boat to can to your plate is riddled with weak spots. Mercury that piles up, histamine that survives heat, botulism if the seal falters, chemicals that regulators can't agree on. The smell of ocean may be familiar. The risks hiding in the can? Anything but. And if fish in a can can turn into a chemistry experiment, wait until you see what's hiding in something as innocent as a can of soup. Now, making its way onto the list at number 5 is canned soup has a reputation as comfort food in a hurry. Quick, cheap, and perfect when you don't feel like cooking. But for older bodies, that comfort comes loaded with 3 stealth hazards: sodium bombs, sneaky potassium swaps, and can-lining chemicals that regulators can't even agree on. Add the lurking risk of botulism from a compromised can, and suddenly your cozy tomato soup looks a lot less friendly. Start with the danger you can't see. Low-acid canned foods like chicken noodle, cream of mushroom, or beef stew require a factory retort that hits exact time, temperature, and pressure. Miss that sweet spot, and Clostridium botulinum spores can survive. Once sealed, the can becomes a perfect incubator. You won't smell it, you won't taste it. That's why health agencies repeat the same blunt rule. If a can spurts, bulges, or leaks, you throw it out sealed. No sniff test, no boil it longer. Just trash it. Now the sodium hit. This one's hiding in plain sight. A half cup of condensed tomato soup clocks about 480 milligrams of sodium. Most people don't stop at half a cup. They pour a bowl. That turns into over 1,000 milligrams in one sitting. Almost the entire day's worth if you're trying to keep blood pressure in check. Chicken noodle and vegetable beef push even higher, 600 to 900 milligrams per serving. Stack that on top of bread, crackers, or deli meat and you're in dangerous territory fast. The reduced sodium labels? Don't be fooled. By law, that just means 25% less than the original. A regular can that was 900 milligrams drops to around 675, still way too high. Only low sodium, 140 milligrams or less per serving, or very low sodium, 35 milligrams or less, really count. Always read the fine print. And here's the plot twist most shoppers miss. In cutting sodium, many companies are sneaking in potassium chloride, now marketed as potassium salt. Sounds healthy, until you remember what happens when your kidneys don't clear potassium well, or you're on common meds like AC inhibitors or ARBs. Hyperkalemia, high potassium, can stop your heart. The National Kidney Foundation flat out warns older adults with CKD, steer clear of salt substitutes with potassium. Yet they're hiding in soups labeled healthy. As if that wasn't enough, the can itself can be part of the problem. For decades, soup cans were lined with BPA-based epoxy. Europe recently set the safe daily intake for BPA so low that practically any exposure exceeds it. And in late 2024, the EU voted to ban BPA outright in food packaging. The US FDA still says it's safe. Meanwhile, BPA-free linings often just swap in other bisphenols like BPS or BPF. Different initials, same hormone-mimicking concerns. Add in the extras, cream soups thickened with starch and sugar, phosphate stabilizers that stress kidneys and bones, or undeclared allergens that trigger recalls, and your so-called comfort bowl starts looking like a trap in disguise. Canned soup promises warmth and nostalgia. What it often delivers is a blast of salt, a chemical cocktail from the can lining, and a roulette wheel of risks your body doesn't recover from as easily past 50. That whoosh when the can opener cuts through? It might be the sound of convenience or the start of a problem you never saw coming. Want the truth about what's really safe in your pantry? Subscribe now so you never get fooled. And while you're at it, drop a like to help spread the word. And if that shook you, wait until you crack open a can of chili, the one hearty shortcut that can hit harder than you think. Now, at number 4, we're looking at canned chili. Canned chili looks innocent. Beans, meat, spices, a ready-made dinner in minutes. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This is one of the riskiest cans on the shelf. Why? Because chili lives in the low-acid zone of canning science. That means it demands extreme sterilization, 240 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit under pressure, to keep Clostridium botulinum from waking up inside. When it's done right, safe meal. When it's done wrong, you've got a botulism trap. The worst part, you'll never smell it coming. That's not a hypothetical. In 2007, a commercial chili sauce plant underprocessed its batches. The result? A nationwide recall, hospitalizations, and some of the most infamous cases of foodborne botulism in recent history. The CDC called it out plain as day. Insufficient thermal processing let spores survive, and toxin formed inside sealed cans. A few unlucky people paid the price. And here's where it gets nastier for older shoppers. Botulism isn't the only red flag. The chili aisle is a minefield of salt bombs, potassium swaps, phosphate additives, and BPA-laced linings. Each one alone is sketchy. Stack them together, and you've basically got a chemistry experiment pretending to be dinner. Start with sodium. A single cup of canned chili with beans hovers around 1,000 milligrams of salt. Eat the whole can, which plenty of people do, and you're swallowing nearly half your daily allowance in one go. The American Heart Association says 1,500 milligrams a day is the safer cap for adults with blood pressure concerns. Do the math. One hearty bowl of chili and you've already blown past the halfway mark before you even grab a soda or slice of bread. Now flip that reduced sodium can, and you'll often see something worse. Potassium chloride, now disguised under the friendlier name potassium salt. For a healthy 25-year-old, fine. For someone over 50 on ACE inhibitors, ARBs, or potassium-sparing diuretics, that hidden swap can push blood potassium to dangerous levels. Hyperkalemia isn't just a lab result. It can trigger irregular heart rhythms without warning. Then come the phosphates. Ever wonder why the meat in canned chili stays so uniform and springy? Sodium phosphate. It locks in texture and water, but it also delivers highly absorbable phosphorus, exactly the kind nephrologists warn older adults to cut back on. Over time, that extra phosphorus stresses kidneys, stiffens arteries, and weakens bones. It's one of those slow-motion risks you don't feel until it's already done damage. And we haven't even touched the can itself. Most brands use epoxy linings historically made with BPA. The FDA still claims current exposure is safe. But Europe's Food Safety Authority recently slashed the safe limit to practically zero and voted to ban BPA in food packaging altogether. Here's the kicker. BPA-free doesn't always mean safe. It often means swapped with other bisphenols that act a lot like BPA. Same song, different verse. So here's the real picture. Canned chili isn't just chili. It's a cocktail of sodium overload, hidden potassium swaps, phosphate additives, and chemical linings, wrapped around a low-acid stew that can become lethal if the factory cut corners. One can, one shortcut, and suddenly that hearty dinner looks like a gamble stacked against your heart, your kidneys, and your nerves. Sweet isn't always safe, and nowhere is that clearer than a can of fruit swimming in syrup. At number 3, sweet but surprisingly risky, canned peaches take the spotlight. The shine of those peaches or pears looks wholesome, almost nostalgic. But the second your spoon hits that syrup, you're not eating fruit anymore. You're eating dessert in disguise. 1 cup of fruit cocktail in heavy syrup clocks in at over 40 grams of sugar. That's 11 teaspoons dumped straight into your bloodstream before dinner even begins. Light syrup? Don't be fooled. It's still sugar water, just a slightly thinner version. The USDA literally defines light by sugar concentration, not health. For anyone over 45, that kind of hit lands differently. Blood sugar swings aren't just uncomfortable, they mess with meds, magnify blood pressure problems, and chip away at heart health. A JAMA study showed adults getting 17 to 21% of calories from added sugar had nearly 40% higher risk of death from heart disease. Bump sugar higher and the risk nearly tripled. Fruit syrup might seem harmless, but it's all part of that tally. And it's not just about diabetes. Statins, blood pressure meds, acid reducers, they all meet their match when daily sugar quietly piles up. A can here, a light dessert there, and suddenly your blood work is doing the talking. Mini hook. And just when you think syrup is the whole problem, the can itself adds another twist. Most of these tins are lined with epoxy that once relied heavily on bisphenol A, BPA. The FDA still says current levels are safe. Europe doesn't agree. In 2023, their food safety authority slashed the tolerable intake to near zero, and by 2024, banned BPA outright in food packaging. The US hasn't followed, but independent tests still pick up bisphenols, even in cans labeled BPA-free. That cherry red cocktail you thought was wholesome? It's been sitting in a chemical bath you never signed up for. And speaking of cherries, that neon red one bobbing in your fruit cup? For decades, it carried FD&C Red number 3, a dye the FDA just banned in foods by 2027 after animal studies linked it to cancer. Some brands already switched, others haven't. That little cherry is a warning light hiding in plain sight. Now add the recalls. Just this year, canned pears were pulled after California regulators found unsafe levels of lead and cadmium. Last year, it was glass shards. These aren't everyday events, but they're proof canned fruit isn't as drama-free as it looks. So what's the move? Drain it, rinse it. Better yet, skip syrup altogether. Buy fruit in water or its own juice. Or head to the frozen aisle for the real win. No syrup, no can lining, just fruit. Pair a half cup with protein like yogurt or nuts, and you've got the sweetness without the sugar spike. Because canned fruit and syrup isn't just fruit. It's a sugar bomb wrapped in a metal question mark, sold as nostalgia, but paid for in risk. If this surprised you, hit the like button so more people find out, and subscribe so you won't miss the next hidden danger in your pantry. Now imagine opening a can that's supposed to be all strength and vitality, only to find something that looks and smells like it's already given up. Coming in at number 2, the leafy green you thought was safe, spinach. The truth about canned spinach is less Popeye, more problem child. Crack the lid, and what spills out isn't leafy greens. It's a soggy lump swimming in brine that reeks more like tin than earth. And inside that clump, risks that stack up fast once you're past 45. First hit, heavy metals. Spinach is notorious for sucking cadmium out of soil like a sponge. That metal doesn't cook off, and canning doesn't wash it away. It stays. Over decades, cadmium builds in your kidneys and bones. Europe actually set strict weekly limits to protect kidney function, and the World Health Organization went further with monthly caps. The point? Even small numbers matter when your body holds onto them for 15 years at a time. Here's where it gets stranger. The can itself isn't a neutral bystander. Most cans are coated inside with epoxy. For decades, that meant BPA. The FDA says safe at current levels, but Europe went the other direction and banned BPA outright in food packaging. Many companies now brag BPA-free, but don't celebrate too fast. It often just means BPS or BPF, chemical cousins with baggage of their own. And then there's the salt. 1 cup of regular canned spinach can hammer you with over 700 milligrams of sodium. That's nearly a third of your entire day's budget gone in a few forkfuls. Even the no salt added cans can sneak in 200 milligrams just from natural sodium and processing. Think about that the next time your blood pressure cuff squeals at you. Worse, reduced sodium sometimes means they swapped the salt for potassium chloride. Great if your heart's fine, but if you've got kidney disease or take certain blood pressure meds, that extra potassium can be the hidden danger nobody warned you about. And don't forget what spinach naturally carries, oxalates. Those are the little crystals that can trigger kidney stones. Clinics keep spinach on the very high oxalate list, and even canned versions don't drop low enough to be called safe for stone formers. Add in its sky-high vitamin K, and anyone on warfarin suddenly has a juggling act. Not too much, not too little, just exactly the same amount every week. Here's the kicker. Even if the spinach itself were perfect, the packaging can still betray you. Low-acid foods like spinach are the classic zone for botulism if processing fails. And you'll never smell it, never taste it. The CDC's line is clear. If a can is bulging, leaking, spurting, or dented deep at the seam, don't open it. Toss it. A taste test isn't brave, it's Russian roulette. So while spinach should be a superfood, the canned version piles on cadmium, salt, oxalates, vitamin K landmines, and a container you can't fully trust. Frozen gives you the speed without the sludge. And honestly, one look at that limp, gray-green clump, and you'll know this isn't strength in a can. It's a compromise in disguise. And if that left a bad taste, wait until you hear about the comfort food in a can that plays dress up as dinner. And finally, taking the #1 spot, canned pasta, the biggest hidden danger of them all. Canned pasta has that deceptive charm. Pop the lid, and you're greeted with the smell of tomato, meat, and something vaguely sweet. It's childhood in a bowl. But under the nostalgia, it's an ultra-processed trap. Sodium, sugar, chemicals, and packaging that quietly add stress to aging bodies. Here's the catch. It isn't just noodles and sauce. It's a factory formula built to survive years on a shelf and taste identical every time. That means starch thickeners, added fats, sugar to balance the acid, and preservatives to keep it safe. Doctors link higher consumption of ultra-processed foods with more diabetes, heart disease, and even higher mortality. So when you're already battling blood pressure or cholesterol, that little red can isn't helping. The sodium story alone is brutal. 1 cup of canned ravioli, around 740 milligrams of salt. Many cans, closer to 1,300. And you know nobody eats half a serving. For seniors on diuretics or AC inhibitors, that's half a day's sodium, or the whole budget, in one sitting. You can rinse beans to cut salt, but pasta drowning in sauce? You're stuck with it. Think the reduced sodium versions are safe? Not if you've got kidney issues. Many of them swap in potassium chloride, which sounds harmless until your meds make that extra potassium dangerous. Hyperkalemia, too much potassium in the blood, can trigger heart rhythm issues that no comfort food is worth. The label may whisper better for you, but for the wrong person, it's worse. And then there's the can itself. Acidic tomato sauce is a nightmare for BPA linings. The FDA shrugs at current levels, but Europe just tightened the safety bar by a factor of 20,000, citing immune system effects. Even BPA-free isn't a green light. Consumer Reports found other bisphenols like BPS still leaching in. Studies are tying them to heart risks and higher mortality. Not exactly what you signed up for with Tuesday night ravioli. Additives don't stop there. Sugar and corn syrup sneak in to make the sauce kid-friendly. Phosphate additives keep the meatballs tender, but quietly overload kidneys already working overtime. Nitrites? They're what make processed meats a known carcinogen. And if that weren't enough, the ingredient list hides allergens. Milk, soy, wheat, egg, and now sesame. That can make one wrong bite a trip to the ER. Even storage has rules the can won't tell you. Leave it in a hot garage at 100 degrees and you're cooking the chemicals right into your food. Open it and store leftovers in the fridge inside the can. That metal tang you taste is the lining breaking down. The fix is simple. Transfer it to a glass container, use it within a few days. But how many people really do that? Bottom line, canned pasta sells the memory of a safe, cheap meal, but every bite comes with a price. Salt shocks, chemical linings, sneaky sugars, and risks that only multiply as you age. The nostalgia is real. The safety? Not so much. You've seen the cans that cut corners with your health, but not every aisle is out to get you. A few shelf-stable staples still hold their ground, and the first one might surprise you. At #2 on the safe list, we've got canned beans. Budget-friendly, nutritious, and surprisingly heart-healthy. Canned beans. For all the noise about canned foods being dangerous, beans are one of the rare exceptions that actually play in your favor, if you know how to pick them and use them right. Here's why. Beans are considered low-acid foods. That means they're naturally more vulnerable to nasty spores like Clostridium botulinum. But when companies can them, they don't just boil them. They put them through a pressure cooking process called retorting, cranking temperatures up well above boiling into the 240 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit range. That blast of heat kills off the dangerous stuff and leaves the beans commercially sterile. Translation: if the can's intact, there's almost zero chance of botulism making its way into your chili. And here's the kicker. If something ever was wrong, you couldn't sniff it out. Botulinum toxin doesn't smell, doesn't look funny, and doesn't taste off. That's why the can itself is the safety check. Flat lids and tight seams? You're good. Bulges, leaks, or deep dents near the seams? That's where you walk away. No second chances. For seniors, canned beans are often safer than what you'll find behind the deli counter. Cold cuts, soft cheeses, and ready-to-eat salads sit in refrigerators where listeria can thrive. Beans, on the other hand, have already been blasted sterile and sealed shut. Once that can cools down, nothing new is sneaking inside until you open it. It's the difference between a locked vault and a fridge door that's constantly opening and closing. Of course, most people's real complaint isn't safety, it's salt. Canned beans can come packed with sodium, but that problem has a shockingly simple fix. Pour them into a strainer and rinse under running water for 10 to 30 seconds. Studies show that quick rinse cuts about 1/3 to nearly half the sodium instantly. That's the difference between a salty gut bomb and a heart-friendly protein source. And protein is just the start. Half a cup of beans delivers 7 to 9 grams of protein, 6 to 9 grams of fiber, plus potassium, iron, and folate. Doctors keep hammering on those nutrients because older adults often fall short, and beans put them all in one cheap, shelf-stable package. Swap out a fatty cut of beef for beans once in a while, and you'll drop cholesterol, steady blood sugar, and feed your gut bacteria with prebiotic fiber. Yes, beans can make you gassy, but even that's manageable. Start small, rinse them well, and let your gut adjust. The upside for your heart, brain, and digestion makes the short-term bloat worth it. Even the can lining has shifted in your favor. Most major brands now use BPA-NI linings. Regulators may argue about trace risks, but if you stick to BPA-free or BPA-NI labels and store cans somewhere cool, not in the garage during summer, you're minimizing exposure even further. Bottom line, as long as you inspect the can, drain and rinse, and keep storage smart, canned beans aren't just safe. They're one of the few canned foods that genuinely pull their weight in both safety and nutrition. And believe it or not, the next one is even more of a kitchen workhorse. Acidic, versatile, and safer than the fresh version in more ways than you'd guess. And finally, at number 1, canned tomatoes, the pantry staple that actually delivers flavor and antioxidants in every can. Canned tomatoes. Crack one open and you get that sharp hiss, the tangy aroma rising up without any mystery slime or bulge. That sound isn't just dinner, it's the sound of a product that was engineered to keep you safe. Here's why. Tomatoes are what food scientists call high-acid foods. That natural acidity, often boosted with a touch of citric acid during processing, keeps their pH below about 4.6. In plain English, the environment inside that can is too hostile for Clostridium botulinum, the bacteria behind botulism. Pair that with the industrial retort process, sealed cans heated to temperatures north of 240 degrees Fahrenheit, and you've got a product designed to lock out one of the deadliest toxins known to man. For seniors, that's a game changer. Because the foods that actually land older adults in the hospital aren't shelf-stable cans. They're the deli meats and soft cheeses sitting in cold cases where listeria can thrive. Tomatoes in cans don't live in that world. They're sterile, acidic, and sealed. As long as the can is intact, no bulges, leaks, or deep seam dents, the odds of danger are staggeringly low. That's the safety side. But the nutrition story is even more interesting. Processing doesn't strip tomatoes down. It actually unlocks more. Lycopene, the antioxidant pigment that makes tomatoes red, becomes easier for your body to absorb once heat and homogenization break those cell walls. Studies show you actually get more usable lycopene from canned sauce or paste than from a raw tomato slice on a sandwich. Add a drizzle of olive oil when you cook with it, and your absorption rate spikes even higher. For older adults watching blood pressure, sodium is the #1 catch. Some canned tomatoes come swimming in salt. The move here is simple. Grab no salt added versions and season it yourself. Those low sodium and very low sodium labels aren't marketing fluff. They're legally defined. Low sodium means 140 milligrams or less per serving. Very low means 35 milligrams or less. Get in the habit of scanning the nutrition facts box instead of trusting the front label. One more layer of truth. Potassium. Tomatoes are naturally rich in it, which is great for most hearts but can be an issue if you're on kidney meds or potassium-sparing drugs. Some low-sodium products swap in potassium chloride, listed now as potassium salt. If that's a concern, stick to plain tomato products without that add-in. And yes, the can lining. Most tomato cans today are labeled BPA-free or BPA-NI, not intentionally added. That shift away from BPA epoxy happened because the acid in tomatoes could pull it out faster. Regulators may bicker about safe limits, but if you store your cans in a cool pantry instead of a hot garage, you're already minimizing risk. Cartons and glass jars are another option if you want to skip metal entirely. Bottom line, canned tomatoes are safe because they're acidic, sterile, and sealed. And they're good for you because processing makes their best nutrients easier to use. Pair them with olive oil, keep an eye on sodium, and you've got one of the smartest pantry staples an older household can buy. Don't let your pantry turn into a health hazard. Hit like if you found this breakdown useful, and subscribe now. I'll guide you to the foods that are safe, senior-friendly, and worth keeping on your shelf.